Welcome to OpenFrame online session. In this session, we'll review sample 3270 terminal screens and how they are connected to OpenFrame using 3270 terminal emulation software and as well as web browsers like Internet Explorer and Firefox. We'll also review some of the functionalities of OSC Manager, which is part of OF admin tool. And finally, we'll review BMS Map Editor software, which provides an easy graphical interface for making any changes to the BMS maps. 3270 emulation. OpenFrame Gateway supports Telnet 3270 protocol. You can use your existing 3270 software for connecting to OpenFrame. The look and feel of the application remains the same, and end users can't identify the difference if they are connected to mainframe versus if they are connected to OpenFrame. Let's look at a sample screen. Once you enter the correct IP address and port number, you can see the logon screen. The logon screen can be customized to individual customer requirement. In this case, you need to enter the CACS region name. OpenFrame comes up with the default CACS region name during the installation time, which is called OSC OIVP1. So enter the region name and press enter. And this is the banner page. Here I'm pressing the clear screen. And then you need to enter the transaction name. In this case, I'm entering a transaction name called DIN1, which does a customer inquiry. The functionality of the screen is that once you enter a customer ID, it fetches the data from a relational database. For the purpose of demo, I'm using the Tibero database, which is similar to Oracle or DB2. And Tibero is the product offering from Microsoft. So before actually fetching the data, let's go ahead and look what data is present in the table. This is the TB admin interface used for managing the Tibero database. Here you can see all the tables that are present in the database, and particularly I'm interested in the customer table. So once you double click on the customer table, you can see there are 15 records in the particular table. And if you look at the different states, there are only 2 different states that all the customers belong to. So now let's go ahead and fetch this particular record. So type the customer number and press enter. And it fetches the first name, last name and address from the database. You can do the same thing for the other customer records. So this is a simple retrieval based on the customer number. I'm pressing PF12 and I'm entering the other transaction ID, DIN2. The functionality of this transaction is that given a state ID, it fetches all the customers from a given state. So first I'm entering New Jersey, and it's fetching all the 13 records that we saw in the database. And next I'm entering Michigan, and it's entering the 2 records. And if you enter any other states like California or New York, it doesn't fetch any records. So this demonstrates the functionality of the CACS screens interacting with the database and fetching the data. Web terminal. Earlier we have seen accessing 3270 screens using 3270 emulation software. In case you want to eliminate the licensing fee for 3270 emulation software and instead use a modern web browser for accessing 3270 screen, then Web Terminal is the right solution. Using Web Terminal not only reduces the licensing cost for 3270 screen, but eliminates the need to install and maintain the custom software on individual user desktops. Let's take a look at the web terminal. Once you enter the specific URL, click on the connect button. You can notice that the LU name has been dynamically allocated by the gateway. This is the initial banner screen, and you need to enter the region name. We are going to use the installation default, that is OSC OIVP1, and press enter. And then it brings up the banner screen. Here you can press the clear screen or pause button. Let's use the same transaction DIN1 and DIN2 for fetching the data from the database. Earlier we have used similar transactions for fetching the data from a 3270 emulation software, and in this case we are using the web browser Internet Explorer for accessing the same screens. And here I'm going to enter the customer ID and it fetches the data from the database. And now I'm going to use the other transaction DIN2. NJ should fetch 13 records, MI should fetch 2 records, and other states should fetch 0 records. So in terms of functionality, it's exactly the same. So far we have seen the interaction of CACS in database, and now let's look at a scenario where the application uses vsam file as a data store. First, let's look at the vsam file that is used by the transaction OIVP. This is the vsam file osc.oivp.file that's used by the transaction OIVP. Let's look at the data in the file. Here you can see there are 6 records, and the last 2 records particularly seems to have incorrect values for the address. So as part of this demo, let's try to fix one of the record with the correct address and say if the data is updated in the vsam file. OIVP is the transaction name, and it brings up the main menu screen where you can browse all the data. Here you can see the first 5 records, and I'm going to press F3 to see the 6th record. So now I'm going to the main menu, and actually I want to update the record number 5. Press enter. And here you can see the address test seems to be incorrect, so I'm just changing the address to the correct state, New Jersey, and press enter. Here you can see a notification data is updated. Now let's go and verify the vsam file is updated or not. Here you can notice the record number 5, the address has been updated. So this demonstrates that using web terminals we are able to access all the transactions including database and vsam, and the functionality is going to remain the same. OSC Manager is part of OF Admin. It is used for monitoring and managing the OpenFrame online system. Now let's take a look at the various functionalities of OSC Manager at a high level. EAB response codes. If you want to list all the response codes that are present as part of the online system, you can just press search and it would list all the functions and the error descriptions. But if you have a particular error code that you want to look up, for example 0A and 04 is the function code and the response code is 2C, it means that there is a QID error. And here you can look at the brief description. It says QID error occurs when the queue specified cannot be found either in the main memory or in the auxiliary storage. This is primarily helpful for looking and debugging the error messages in the CACS log. The next option is named counter. Here you can see all the named counters that are defined in the system and the current values of those named counters. The next option is region information. Here, like, you can select any region. In this case, we have only one demo region. For a given CACS region, you can look at the system resources that are being consumed by each of these resource types. And it also provides an option for looking at the CWA, which is the common work area. This option is very helpful if your application is using CWA extensively, but in this case, the sample application is not using anything, and hence you are seeing the low values. The next option is connected terminals. And here you can see there is one terminal that has been connected. This is the terminal that is being connected. And let us say for some reason this terminal is not responding and you would like the admin to reset this terminal. The admin can use OSC Manager, select the terminal that he wants to disconnect, and ask for the confirmation and say OK. And now if you go and look at the connection, it has been disconnected. And you can also view the transaction statistics. So select the CACS region name and date. And once you refresh, you can see the list of all the transactions that ran in the particular region, the number of times this transaction was executed, and the average response time of the user. You can also see the minimum and maximum response time for the user. And it also captures the actual CPU time that is being consumed by this transaction. And you can look at the average, minimum, and maximum as well. At the bottom, you can see the summary of all the transactions. That is 120 transactions has been executed with the region in total. And you can also look at the minimum and maximum response times. The next option is queues. Here you'll be able to view the TSQ and TD queues. My application is using TS queues. So here I have selecting a sample TSQ and trying to view the data. And you also have an option for looking at the resource definitions. And first, you can look at the various groups that are being defined. Here, let us choose the OIVP group. And here you'll be able to select the resources that are associated with this particular group. It has one vSAM file. It has many COBOL programs. And you can also look at the transaction information. DAN1, DAN2, and OIVP are the transactions that we used in our demo. You can also add the new transactions for a CSS region from this interface, but the new transaction won't be reflected until you recycle the region. Any changes you make to the resource definitions will be reflected only after the region recycle. But if you want the changes to be reflected at the runtime without recycling the region, OpenFrame provides an option called runtime resources. So once you choose the runtime resources, and for example, if I want to modify a transaction, and let us say DAN1 is a transaction, and let us create a sample scenario where I would like to disable the transaction DAN1. DAN1 transaction has some issues and you want the users to stop executing this transaction. You can always route them to a particular screen, error message screen, but in this case I am using a default, the good morning message. And first let me show how the transaction is working. So the DAN transaction is working fine. And now I'm trying to disable this transaction by sending it to the good morning screen. So I'm changing the runtime resource and I'm clicking save. And now if I try to enter the transaction DAN1, it would take me to the good morning screen. So this demonstrates that the changes that we are doing here is reflecting at the runtime. These are some of the functionalities of the OSC manager, and please note that all of these functionalities are available from command line as well. BMS Map Editor is an Eclipse-based tool that runs on individual user desktops for making any changes to the BMS maps via graphical user interface. Let's now take a look at the tool. Once you copy the maps to your desktop, you can browse and open the map. In this case, I'm opening the map OSC OIVP1. You can look at the actual map source. Here, you can either use a text editor for making any changes, or you can use a GUI editor and do the changes by doing a drag and drop and modifying the properties that are listed below. For example, I want to change the layout of this map. I want to move the browse option to the last and change the color from blue to red and change the initial data as well and make the data field blink. So let's see how easy is it to make these changes using map editor. So first select the field that you want to modify and you can see the line number is 10, and here I'm moving this to the end and you can see the line number is automatically updated. And here I also want to change the data to, and let's say change the color to red, and I want the field to blink. So once you make the changes, you can see all the changes are reflected. We moved the data field from top to the bottom. We changed the color. We also modified the initial data field and we made it blink. This completes the demo for OpenFrame Online. Please watch the remaining videos for other topics.